Summer finishes dance some nights at 8:15 p.m. She's hungry when I go to pick her up. And so the other day I thought, oh, okay, I'm going to do a mom win. And I am going to make her chicken nuggets and bring them to the studio so that she has them. So I made the nuggets. And then I thought, ooh, she really likes to dip them in maple syrup. I'm going to put them in some kind of container. But of course, I didn't really have a container. And I saw this little soy sauce bowl. And I thought, oh, that's perfect. So I'm going to carefully place the nuggets in the Tupperware, and I'll put the maple syrup in the center so that it's kind of supported by the nuggets. And I carefully put it on the seat next to me. Every time I hit a speed bump in our neighborhood, it was a shower of maple syrup. There was maple syrup everywhere.
You really outdone yourself with this meal delivery.
It was, yeah. Not going to do that one again.
Did she at least like her nuggets? Did she eat the nugs?
She did. She did.
Mom win. Mom win all over.
Be happy, 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 happy.
What a beautiful conversation today with Carmen Curtis. Carmen's journey from the stage to the studio, from motherhood to midlife, to where she is today is just so inspiring. One of the things that really, really moved Shelly and I today was her vulnerability in sharing her experience. I think it really moved me a lot. Carmen's reminder that reinvention is always possible. It feels like such a gift because, whether you're a new mom or you're navigating midlife or stepping into an empty nester syndrome, that there is freedom and new purpose and that we're constantly learning in life. We hope that you leave this episode feeling seen, empowered, and ready to embrace your own path of creativity, self-discovery, vulnerability, and heart. Thank you as always for being part of our Creative Mamas Unplugged community. Let's dive in with Carmen. The relationship that you have with your children and that openness and that vulnerability. Your relationship with Zoe, you had her when you were performing full time and you were traveling the world, and she was, she came everywhere with you, and she adapted to your lifestyle and you adapted to that. And then you went and you became the example for her and, built your business. And then I would like to ask you more about the aerial yoga too. We want to get into that. What was it like as a new mom and a young mom, relatively speaking, while performing in Vegas in this massive show? And actually you had her before you got to Vegas. Is that right?
I was in New York City performing De La Guarda at the Daryl Roth.
Right. De La Guarda. Okay.
And then we took a break from that and moved back to Los Angeles. I was 25 and my career was just taking off, and I got pregnant, and I actually thought my life was over as a performer, and I was scared, and I don't feel like I wanted it. I didn't know. I was just like, what? The pull-out method doesn't work. That was one of the okay, whoa, wait a second. I didn't plan this. This is not my journey. I have all these dreams. I can't be a mom yet. And Greg and I both, my husband, we didn't really know what to do, but I could feel he was like, yeah, cool, let's do it, and he's a bit older than me, but he is one of those, this is what's happening. So we adapt and we go with the flow. And me, I kind of like the routine of I have some goals and set routines that's going to happen. And, but he is more spontaneous. And so we took a drive to San Francisco and just thought about it and talked about it. And I think my biggest fear was that my career was over. No one was having, in my world and my work, no one was having children and then going back on stage. And I still had this thought of, oh, you become a mom and, all you have to do is that. And you can't, I don't know. I just hadn't really processed what it meant to be a mother. Anyways, we had her, and it was and once we made the decision for me, how I am is there was no turning back. Yes, I want to do this, which I chose to do this. And that's how I take it with my children. I chose to have them. I am lucky to have them. So I need to do anything and everything I can to give them the best that I can and love them. And it's, I never wanted them to ever feel like they were a burden or anything like that. And I had never changed a diaper before. I had never babysat. I was a gymnast. I was a national gymnast. I moved away from home at 11. I didn't know anything about family, parenting, or taking care of anyone else besides myself. So she was born and we kind of learned, like literally, like our friends were all performers. We were in LA. I'm like, my friend was another performer. Like, how do you change a diaper? Like, I don't know. I think there was no YouTube channel. There was no like podcast to learn from. It was just like, there was this big book and we just learned with her and we just adored her and loved her and brought her into every moment. But at 8 weeks, postpartum, I got a call from De La Gorda and said, can you come back to New York City? And I was like, well, I just had a baby. They're like, I know. So we have a personal trainer that will get you in shape. We hired a nanny. So she'll show up at the theater so you can like go on stage. And the company also knew nothing about this. We were like setting the way. They're like, so is that okay? And I'm like, I think so. I'm not sure. And then they're like, we'll just start you in like the easy things. You just have to drum and chant at first. And then as you get fit, you can get more into it. And at 11 weeks, we moved back to New York City and I started back performing. And I'd like get out of the apartment, breastfeeding, hailing a cab to the theater. We'd get to the theater. The nanny would be there. I'd give Zoe to the nanny. The nanny would watch rehearsals she was just there on stage the whole time. Like we never thought about like, maybe that's not appropriate, just there. And then I started performing. I would go perform in between shows. I'd come back and breastfeed and then go back. And then after and she'd usually sleep when I was performing. And then after the show, we would always go have dinner with the cast at like 11 or 12 p.m. And she would come with us, have dinner, sit right there, fall asleep at dinner. Then we continue to have dinner. She'd usually fall asleep at like midnight, continue to have dinner, continue to go to a party, go wherever we were. We just find a little spot to plop her. And then everyone just like talk about community. I mean, she had a cast of 8 women that became mom and 8 dads, that were there. Everyone else just kind of like, wow, there's a baby. What do we do? Like it was this really intense community that supported us in every way. And I was super blessed that the production company knew nothing about women having children and coming back to work because they were like, oh, here you go. I then went on to Korea on tour and they flew us and the family. They gave us a place with apartment for the baby. They had a Korean nanny that was there and they took care of me and the baby. And again, they had no idea. They spent so much money on nannies and babysitters for me. It was absolutely wild, but it awakened me of my career is not over. I hadn't anticipated that. And I became more spontaneous and open because I needed to always adapt with Zoe and, not stay out so late and find something that was comfortable for her or say no sometimes or ask. The production company was so great. Ask for help. And I was getting it. And from there, for some reason, as the mom, having a baby, I became more of a leader too. Like, well, she has a baby, she's a mom, so maybe she should be the dance captain. And, maybe she should, which is kind of wild. I was always a gymnast, like, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, I do exactly what I'm told. And now to tell other people have a little bit more authority just because I, had sex and it turned into a baby like I did, but it kind of became my role as mother to everyone and leader. And then from there, that's when Franco Dragone from Cirque du Soleil was looking for a harness specialist, which the show De La Gorda's, I was a harness specialist. And he was looking for a harness specialist, a dancer, a swimmer, a diver, and a scuba diver, and an acrobat. And he had looked for years for it. And I think I was the only one that had all those qualities.
Wow.
And with that was this big awakening too, of like, I didn't want to learn to scuba dive. I had to do that for a friend that was learning to teach scuba diving. I learned to swim really well because in gymnastics, my coach hurt me so bad that I had a neck issue and I had to use swimming as a form of therapy. I dove out of a friend of mine at UCLA was like, well, you're a gymnast, you could do it. So started to teach me how to dive. Like all of a sudden I started to realize that everything that you go through, it has a purpose. And I wouldn't have been that harness specialist, dancer, acrobat, swimmer, scuba diver without going through everything I had gone through. And he wanted me to do the research development, which meant go create, go make stuff up. And I'd never had to do that before. I had directors and choreographers and producers tell me what to do. But because I was a mom and I started that dance captain role and kind of like that mom leadership role, I just took it in and I got to express and share my creativity, my thoughts, my feelings. And, we went to Belgium to create the show and brought Zoe. She understood Korean at this point and English. She was 2. And then she also had a French nanny in New York that spoke French. And now we're in Belgium. So she went to a French preschool when I was rehearsing. Her other nanny was British. She didn't speak for a long time, almost until she was 3, because she understood so many languages. She would respond, but you just didn't know what the heck she was saying. The accents were all over the place. But she came with us and she was a part of it. Once I was in Dragon, it started to be a bit different as a mother. They didn't have a nanny on site. They really didn't want to know I was a mom. I started to have to lead 2 lives. That's when it became a bit more challenging as this creative working mom who I was doing something in Le Rêve that was amazing for me. I was creating things. I was helping support. I also got to coach, which I loved coaching. I loved it so much. I loved harness. I got to create the harnesses. I got to help create the harness acts. I got to have such a huge role, but I couldn't talk about my daughter, really. It needed to be separate. And that was a huge shift for me. I think that was some of the hardest challenges as a mother. And when we got to Vegas, it felt a little easier because there was other families there, especially in the crew. There was one other family on our team that had a child. I wasn't the only woman that had a child that was still an aerialist. We were very different women, but that was something at least we could bond on and talk about. And she could go to a real kindergarten with other kids. She wasn't just in our cast and in the backstage. And so it felt a bit more normal, but it really started to pull me away from the time that I got to spend with her. Once Dragon, that created Le Rêve, sold us to the Wynn Hotel, that's when things got even more challenging for me. I was definitely a performer and they wanted nothing to know or do with me as a mother. And that needed to stay completely separate.
The Win is very corporate. I worked there with you.
Yeah.
And then Le Rêve was very artistic. And, we were entering this corporate world. There's a lot of limitations and a lot of things that keep changing. I don't know where we're at with it now, but.
And I had never felt that before. I was with creative companies before that were embracing and supporting. So that was a new one for me. And I think that started to bring a bit more of the mom guilt. And there's a time where you realize that getting done with your last act, where it's the most dangerous, that you could die if you're not focused at 11:30 at night, and then getting out of there at midnight, and then having dinner, and then your child goes to school at 8 a.m. That lack of sleep, that lack of time with Zoe was playing a toll. And I got pregnant with Jude in Vegas, and that was the awakening of, I love being a mother. And that I was 33 at that time. My hormones were so different. Holy hell. I was ready to be a mom. I wasn't scared of it. I was like, yes, this feels right. And I did feel like it could enhance my daughter's life to have a sibling. Yet it wasn't like I was having so many, it was going to take away from her time. And it was crazy age difference of 7 years, but it was so perfect in the end. And when I got pregnant in Le Rêve at 33, all of a sudden, people in Le Rêve were getting pregnant. Like it was working. Carmen made it work, even in this corporate thing. And in my dressing room, there was a row of us, and we all would get our period a week behind one another. And the first one didn't get their period. We're like, oh, that's weird. Second one didn't get their period. Then it skipped one. Then I didn't get my period. And then the next row, at one point, there was 7 women in Le Rêve, all pregnant. We were all a week behind one another. It was wild. I had other people to talk with and communicate about, and it was really incredible. It felt just normal and real and exciting. And I kind of thought, well, maybe I could stay and it's going to be different. But it did feel like it was time because my daughter was older. And I was lucky because, like, when you get pregnant then with this corporation, they're like, okay, you're not allowed in the theater anymore. So I got to go home paid and be there and enjoy the pregnancy. And then when Jude was born, Zoe was at school during the day. So I got to be with Jude. And then when she'd come home, I'd put Jude to sleep so I could be with Zoe. It was like super easy to balance. I mean, I really recommend that. It just was like having 2, only children. And she was also kind of like his mother. I could shower. And whereas Zoe grew up quick. She traveled the world with us in the beginning of her life, and she became more independent, but she was different from that. It wasn't that normal life. It was an incredible life with love and support of a lot of other adults. And she got to see the world and go to so many places. But Jude, I felt, got kind of more of that like classic normal life, and it did feel right for Zoe to be done with Vegas and for us to go somewhere else. And Greg and I were done with Vegas. And that's when we moved to Ventura.
There's something really beautiful about your journey in that you didn't really purposely go into this, but I don't know if you realize in a lot of ways, you were the leader. You were the first one with De La Guarda to have the child. And luckily it was such a family environment and such a cool environment. They were able to, foster you and Zoe and the family through this. Well, you got to bring all of that experience and love and motherhood and life, which kind of propelled your career. Then you had that challenging moment with arriving in Vegas, and yet you were the first one, you were the trailblazer, which made the others around you feel like, okay, if Carmen can do it, then I can do it too. And now there's so many families, like by the time the show closed, it was like everybody was having kids. That's kind of a beautiful thing that you carved that sort of trailblazing way. For any moms out there, any of our listeners who might be interested in the Cirque world, what if I want to go on tour with the show? How safe am I going to feel in this journey? Can I do this?
If you really, really want it, you can do it. You can figure it out. We've, to your point, as a leader, I never realized I was a leader until I left what I thought my performance world in Vegas. And then there was an awakening to, I guess I have been the one to stand up for it. I guess I have been the one to fight through it, to find a way. And I think I learned a lot of that from Greg, who is one of those that will find a way. If you truly, truly want it and it's going to make you happy, again, you don't want to lose yourself, right? You can find a way. Even when I worked with Beyonce and she was going to go on tour, we had to plop it all these different cities and my kids were young. It's like, okay, I'm going to make less money, but I'm going to fly them into certain cities and be there for a couple days. Or when we had to go live in Austria and I had to perform and we had both kids, Mom, you're coming with me. I'm flying my mom in, or I'm paying for nannies and babysitters, or I'm putting it in my contract that I need to be done at a certain time. And what I had found is I was always fearful of asking for those things. But if you really want it and they really want you, you need to ask for what you need and you need to find a way to create that. For me, I would ask, can you support me in this way? This is what's important to me. If my kids are happy, if my kids are around me, I am going to be better. I'm going to do better work. I'm going to be able to give more. Otherwise, it's, there's a lot of times where it's going to affect my work. And I know that. Most of the time when I ask for it, they give it. to me or some of it, and then I have to make up for it. And that's that time, energy, money. Like, is this worth it for me? And is it worth it for my family? And if it's really, really worth it for my family, then maybe sacrifice how much you make. And I think that's something that other women, as I was one of the first moms, people didn't realize that, yeah, I make the same as you, but I'm paying a nanny or a babysitter, or I'm flying in another person to be here to manage it, it is a give and take.
Creative Mamas Unplugged is produced by Breatheasy Productions with music by Jeremy Jurin. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to give my mama 5 stars and keep coming back. Thanks to us kids, there are plenty of stories to tell, and you are not alone.
We are inspired by you. Thank you for joining our Creative Mamas community. Support Creative Mamas Unplugged on Patreon to get your name in the credits, receive extra content, and earn some fun prizes. With this, we can keep creating, uplifting, and growing this incredible community together. We love you so much. Applause.